amazing for a conversation about frame data. And not just frame data. I'm telling you everything I could possibly tell you that I know about it. And to do this, I prepared a bunch of slides or videos, not videos, things that are on the internet. Websites, that's what I'm looking for, websites. I got a bunch of websites to help as visual aids. And that's, I think, there are a lot of really great resources online now that really help visualize it. So I'm not even going to be turning on Tekken 8 for this portion of the video because this isn't unique to any individual fighting game. This is in every game that exists. This is how games work. And if you want to reach the highest of levels of games playing, you have to understand how they work, how the designers, what the limitations of the game are. Once you see those limits and you understand what they are, how they are designed, then you can start to understand the theory of how to create your own mix-ups, how to create your own broken-ass tools. You can't do that really effectively if you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And I'm going to preface this with the fact that all of you really already know frames. You really do. Inside, in your hands, you can feel it. But what you don't know, maybe some of you, is like what the numbers really mean. So when you look at a table, you don't know what that stuff is saying. So I'm going to try and help you with that today. Also, I want this to be interactive. So if you have more questions, you're like, what is this? What is that? Please, thank you for the raid, SMP Loops. If you have more questions along the way, please just ask. I want this to be as informative as possible. It's kind of a lecture right now today. This is actually a lecture. I have a syllabus and everything. Okay, so now let's just get into it. I'm going to change the music for this part because I want to just kind of be consistent and not worry about levels too much. And then we'll get into it. Let's find a good, long, non-copyright hitting music. That's too relaxing. God damn it. This one? Perfect. Perfect. Whew. Okay. So, this will be the start of the actual video. Hello, YouTube, and everybody else who's watching this right now. I'm going to be going over something very important, which is how you really work with frame data. This is going to be a pretty comprehensive workshop. I'm going to tell you everything I possibly know about frame data, how to read it, what it means, what it looks like. I'm going to give you examples. There are even going to be links in the chat that are going to tell you what I'm looking at, because everything I'm using as visual aids is not in the game. People have already explained this many times before. So I'm just going to put it all together for you. And here we go. So let's just hope my computer doesn't break. It does that sometimes. Yes! Yes! It worked. Okay, put the chat right there. Open this up. Make this bigger. Boop, boop. So we're going to start with this video right here. Is it cutting stuff off for you? I'm afraid to touch it. Fuck. Okay, we'll start here. Get a little small. Can you read this chat? Is it too small? Also, are you getting feedback? Are you hearing the music through my microphone? I think you are, right? Shit, why isn't it? Chat, can you hear me and hear the music through the speakers? You can't at full screen, maybe you should 2 times it? Okay. Even bigger then. Bigger we go. Sounds all fine? We can hear you. Audio levels are good. Okay, thank you. I had someone once told me in the video comment section that the audio levels were like, it was too hard to hear me, and I don't want that to be happening, so I try to be careful about that. Okay, this here is a visual example of frames. The basic thing. I hear you, but the music isn't feedback. It isn't? Oh, great. Fantastic. Well, guess I didn't have to worry about that. Frame data. What is it? I'm going to paste this in the chat so you can all see and follow along if you want to. There it is. Hey, Trick, you're looking lovely tonight, like a midnight snack. Ah, yes. This is daytime today where I am, but yes, I am. Thank you. So frame data, I'm going to read it right from infotainment, whatever. The fighting game glossary. I'm going to be using a lot from here. I think it really has great aids. So I'm just going to read it. A complete list of the inner workings of every move in a fighting game. Pretty much everything will be measured in frames. That's why we keep talking about frames all the time. A fighting game's fundamental building block of time. So frames are time. That's how you talk about time in a fighting game. It's our lingo. So that's why we use the word frames. I've had someone in my chat or somewhere at one point said, can we use another word other than frames to describe frames? I'm like, no, we cannot. Let's not make this more complicated than it already is. Frames are time. If you want to think of time instead of frames, then think of it that way. But it's going to be hard later on as we get farther into it. Setting the stage, though. So frames have several parts. Startup, active frames, and recovery frames of every move. And this is how, frame advantage is built on hit and on block. You also have how much damage moves do and other weird properties. We don't care about that for this discussion. I would be a one frame, that's how fast I am. Okay, so frame data can intimidate a lot of people because it's a giant spreadsheet. You've seen my spreadsheet, and it's huge. And it looks pretty overwhelming, and it is. But really, frame data is not intended to be memorized like a list of formulas for your high school math class. It's so-so. Half agree, half disagree. The most important numbers, this part I agree with, are the startup of a move, how fast is it? And how safe or unsafe the move is when it gets blocked. Basically, how risky is this attack to use? How fast is it? And how risky is it to use on block? And when you're getting started with frame data, you can generally skip all the other numbers and focus on those. I'm not doing that today. I'm giving you everything, so get ready. When you're getting, I already read that. Look for fast moves and safe moves and try those moves out in the match and see how you do. Yeah, that's the level of detail most people go into when they talk about frames. Then as you get more practice with the game, the other numbers will make more sense naturally. I don't think this is actually the case. I know people who've played games a lot and they still don't know what the fuck's going on with these frames. So let's describe here. Hi, Jordan. You at the top line. Your enemy's the bottom line. Now, this attack that you're seeing here from you can't see my cursor, unfortunately. From you is coming from the move stats on the left. We use frame data for this attack. So the startup, or execution, you could say, is 2. Now, in here, you'll see a yellow, green, and then there's like a little red in number 2 under active. That's because this move is active on the second frame. The first active frame is on the last frame of startup. This part I don't think is super important. I tend to gloss over this. I even gloss over it because all I care about is when does this move hit the opponent. And as long as you're consistent in how you talk about it, it's fine. So most of the time, the first frame of active frames, which is when a move can hit, after it's been on startup, is going to be included in the last startup frame. I really don't think that's important. I don't think it matters, but I'm trying to be comprehensive and tell you everything I know. Because this part varies from game to game and like from community to community. There's no consistency on this. But every game is internally consistent. So I don't think it's important to know this, frankly. All you need to know is what's the startup and how many active frames does the move have, and how much recovery does the attack have. So here, startup is 2. It's active for 2 frames. I had to say all that because you have a slash here on number 2. I didn't want people to be confused. And then you're active for 2 frames. Recovery is 2 frames, so you have 4 and 5 there. It's white, blue. And then the total frames is how many frames is the entire attack, from startup to active to recovery. And that's 5. All right, cool. Now your opponent here, in this example, is getting hit. They're the second line. And they're orange. They're in stun. So on the second frame, which is the second frame of the startup, and the first frame of the active frames, they get hit on frame 2. But they're not in stun yet. They enter stun on the next frame. Again, we're going into the weeds here, but this is what we're going to do. Thank you for following Cool Cat, which is why you see number 1 on active frame 2 or frame 3 if you're counting from the beginning. If you're getting lost, just ask. So now this character is going to be in, his opponent is going to be in stun for 7 frames here. Now, if you look, we're both stuck on the 3rd frame. From frame 3 to frame 5, I can't move either because I have recovery. So I've hit them. They're now stuck for 3 frames. So am I. And then on the 6th frame, I'm allowed to act now because my move is over. But they're still stuck in stun. So in this instance, we would say I'm plus 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm plus 4 on hit here. That's what plus 4 means. It means my move ends and I get to do something while you're stuck in stun. And the difference between those 2 numbers, how much stun the move creates and how quick your move is what gives you advantage or disadvantage. It goes either way. It doesn't matter which direction you look at. This is how all frames work in every game. Smash, platformers, 3D games, 2D games. That's why I'm using a 2D example. The same things are happening in all games. I'll show you other examples too, but this is the first one. And then you can also see here, because we're going on everything, on the left side, it says advantage plus 4, plus 5 on late hit. Now, why is it plus 5 on late hit? Well, now we're going to use our understanding of this process to tell you why. Well, look at the active frames on this little diagram here. There are 2 numbers, 2 and 3. There are 2 frames that you could hit on your active frames. Your total move frames are the same. That never changes. So if I hit you on the 2nd frame or on the 3rd frame, I'm still going to exit my recovery after 2 frames happen, right? That blue bar you see there, that never moves. That doesn't move. It doesn't matter when I hit you. As long as I hit you on my active frames, I will exit stun immediately. So you're plus 5 because if you hit someone on your 3rd frame, you still only have 2 frames until you exit. So now you've hit them on a later active frame, and you're exiting at the same relative time you would normally, but you just gained another frame because you didn't waste that 1st frame. What does the half green, half red box mean? Yeah, that's what I said at the beginning, but I'll say it again. It's saying, I'm pretty sure in this case, it's confusing because different games handle this differently. Different communities handle this completely differently. And I think it's confusing. But what it should most likely be saying is that on this attack, it's active on its 2nd frame. But that's also its startup. So on the 2nd frame of its startup, it's also active. So the 1st frame is starting up. There's no active frames yet. On the 2nd frame, it's basically the last frame of startup overlaps with the very first active frame. I think that's very confusing. I prefer when these 2 numbers are separate. I don't like them being in the same together. But you really don't need to worry about that because every game is, every community is consistent internally. So whether they mean execution is just the startup or execution is startup plus the 1st frame of active frames, it's irrelevant because the math won't change and your mix-ups won't change. because every community is internally consistent. But across communities, across games, there's a wide variety of inconsistency. So in VF, we don't do this, I think. I don't know. I don't think Tekken does this either. Maybe they do. I don't know. Doesn't matter, though. All you need to know about is how many active frames you have, what your execution is. Everything else stays the same. But that's why this part has a half. Okay, done with that one. Off the screen. So, now, we're going to go over... Well, any other questions about that first one? I'll keep moving. You can ask questions as I go, but I'm going to keep moving forward. So now we're going to talk about Virtua Fighter, because I think VFTC has a great visualization of this process, I think. So does Tekken, but I want to talk more about phases of attack. It's too small. Please let me know if this is not big enough. I will adjust if needed. So here, again, we're going to talk more about startup, active frames, and recovery frames. Just another visual example. Size is good, perfect. So in this example here, where it says, I see, in VF we do the same thing. We actually include the first frame as active as like part of the execution. We don't actually call it startup. Startup in VF just includes literally the startup. So there's no active frame included. In Virtua Fighter, we say execution. What's the execution of this attack? And that includes the first active frame, which you see here. But the startup has no active frames in it. I prefer this way of thinking about it because it's clearer. So I don't think about what's the start of my attack. I don't give a fuck what the startup is. I want to know how long until it's smacking you in the face. I would say that last thing we just looked at, it has one execution frame. 2 execution frames, sorry. And its startup is 1. I don't like overlapping startup with active. That's not useful. Thank you for coming in. I'm glad you made it late, but like we're gonna go over a lot. This is going to be a long discussion. So we're gonna go a little bit more into this. By force, I'm glad. I'm just gonna read this part because I think it's just well said. The chart above, oh, not above, this one up here. Ah, fuck. Instead of saying above, look below. Okay, so it's 10 frame 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 0 is 10, 1 is 11, and 2 is 12. So this is a 12 frame attack, okay? So this chart shows 11 frames of startup for a punch. But this actually represents a punch that executes in 12 frames. And we more commonly refer to this as a 12 frame punch. This is exactly like Tekken, okay? For my Tekken heads, this is exactly the same. Why isn't this an 11 frame punch? The answer is because hit detection doesn't begin until the 12th frame when the attack becomes active. So simply referring to the 11 frames where nothing has really happened yet doesn't really mean much to anyone. We're only interested in when something happens on the very next frame. Okay? So you could say, if you want to get into the weeds, and we are, because this is giving you everything I know about this, okay? The simple relationship between execution and startup is startup plus 1. Okay? Active frames. When a punch has fully extended, hit detection usually lasts for a small amount of frames, 1 or 2. This is VF. Other games have different numbers. This is known as active frames, during which time an opponent can either be hit a guard, or even reverse your attack. So the startup frames are the time when you can be interrupted, right? Yes. So when we say 12 frames, on the 12th frame it connects, yes. In most games we refer to it, in Tekken included, yes. Yes. 12 frame attack means on the 12th frame, it's now active. That's what it means. I think Soul Calibur for a time used to not include that. Some games don't. Like, say it this way. But I think a lot of communities are switching over to the way we do it in Virtua Fighter and the way Tekken does as well, because it's less confusing. I don't give a fuck how many start frames it is. I want to know, when does this move hit you? So if I want to interrupt, I got to use an 11 frame move or less. Yes, exactly. If your opponent is, if you say you're both at frame 0, you're both in neutral, and you both attacked right away, that means if you do an 11 frame move, you hit them before their 12 frame move hits you, because yours is faster. Thanks for following Laurie Frame. Period, exactly. Recovery. So, when a hit phase ends, the punching arm begins to retract until the entire attack has ceased and the player is free to move again. This final phase is called recovery. Now, this chart here is showing you 14 frames of recovery. Now, this part's important. The duration of the recovery phase is not usually documented, as it has little to no practical value. However, it has, I disagree with that. It does in Virtua Fighter have a lot of value, actually. But whatever, it's fine. However, you can calculate the recovery of an attack if you know the duration of the execution, active, and total frames. So recovery equals total execution frames minus the execution minus the active plus 1. Because active start execution, why is it plus 1? Here, look at this. So we have a 27 move total frames minus the 12 frame of execution. Oh, I know why, because it's a 12 frame execution, which includes 1 extra frame for the active frame. Minus 2 active frames plus the 1, because we've took out, we're counting execution and active like twice, so we have to get rid of that. So it becomes 14. Don't worry too much about this. But again, I'm just telling you everything I know. Let me catch up. As someone who wants to steal turns, I need to know this. Yeah, exactly. Total frames and recovery become more important when you sidestep people. That's when it becomes really important. The recovery helps understand whiff punishing. Yes, exactly. Because lets you know how much time do I have to whiff punish someone. Because you don't want to hit them during their active frames because you'll get popped in the face. So how much time is there between when the move is active, when the move is no longer active, and when they're still stuck in their animation? So recovery is really important for whiff punishing. Bliss, you're not skipping ahead at all. No. Total frames. So the length of an entire attack from start to end. Startup, active, and recovery. That's the total duration of an attack. Total frames. This is the same attack we've been looking at since the beginning. 27 frames. Okay. So this part, we're just going to use this portion because this portion is relevant to all games. Everything else, every game's a little different. So I'm not going to go over that. But this first part's universal, so it doesn't matter. Okay? So here we have an example. 2 players. Let me catch up with chat. Whenever I say sorry, literally, I hate that guy. Yeah, we all do. We all do. Basic attack analysis. So this section, we're going to briefly look into cases where player 1 and 2 are executing attacks at around the same time. Exactly the same time, not around. And the factors that determine which attack will succeed. Basically, when an opponent executes an attack near the same time and within range of each other, the attack that reaches the active phase first will win. This is the fundamental concept you must understand when building your frame traps. This is what all frame traps are built on. All high-level play is built on this fundamental understanding between both players. If one player doesn't know this, they're going to get bodied because the other one does. And there's nothing they can do about it. Nothing. If they don't know this or feel it. And I'm going to count feeling it as knowing. So you can say, I'm an intuitive player. I don't need to know the frames. Yeah, but you know when not to attack, right? Yeah, I do. Okay, then you know this. Okay? You know this too. So you're included in the club of people knowing frames. If you don't know this, you will get destroyed. Look at the example. So, player 1 and player 2 attack at the same time, right here. Look at this. Player 1, startup, P. Virtua Fighter, we use P means punch, and forward and punch means another attack. Okay? Think of any move you want. Link to the slides. Thank you, Skull King. And this one specifically where we're at right now. I love that you said that because I definitely play on vibes, but I always felt like a masher. Yeah, you can use vibes. Whatever gets you here, The point of this is to teach you more so that if you want to understand why is this working, and understanding the why allows you to create new things. If you just kind of go by vibes, you can figure a lot of things out, but there's some things you're not going to figure out. And knowing the frames allows you to find those things that you're not going to figure out. Some things you just have to look at the system to understand and understand how the system interacts with each other. And we're going to go into that in a bit too. That's later. But I got to get this covered first. Let's see what we got. Yep. Yeah, we're going pretty slow because this is a lot. So player 1, player 2 attack at the same time. Player 1 does a punch. It takes 12 frames to come out. Player 2 does a hit elbow. Forward punch and VF is an elbow. Those take 14 frames. So player 2's thing takes 14 frames. Look at who's active first. The person who does the 12-frame jab. Let's read it out. Player 1's attack wins because it's faster. That is, it reaches the active frames first. Therefore, is said to execute faster than player 2's attack. So, even if player 1 attacks after player 2, 1 frame later to be exact, player 1's attack will still win because it becomes active first due to its faster execution. Okay? I was like that in a college jazz class. All right, so this next bit, attack trades is consistent for both games. Because this second bit here, actually no, these both work. This whole thing works. So the first example here, you'll see them both attacking on the exact same frame. Player 1 wins, it's faster. Second example, player 1 still wins because they're delaying their attack by 1 frame, but they still hit. So think of this as you're online and you get 1 frame delay, right? You're still gonna hit the person who did a slower attack because you have a frame delay to work with. But if you're online and the delay is really bad, you might have 2 frames of delay and you end up getting a punch and they did theirs because they're just mashing forward, they're mashing a button. You're gonna lose out because they're mashing the button and your delay caused you an issue. So if you find that your buttons are losing in situations where you know your timing's proper, delay is impacting your play. And you might not want to practice in that situation. I highly advise against that. I think you should play in good internet connections because they will mess you up if you don't. Personally, I think it impedes your learning, impairs your learning, especially if you're learning by feel. Okay, next one, trading. Does tracking apply in both games? No, they don't. Okay. Attacking trades. But yeah, this fundamental concept is how I know there's lag, because this happens. I know my timings. So I know the second I'm getting beat by a move that's like a little slower than mine, and mine should win, I know there's lag. And like if it's too bad, I like don't want to play it, basically. I like to think of frames in terms of seconds to make it easier to understand the beginning. If my punch takes 12 seconds to reach to 14, to switch terms to seconds to frames, if that helps you, bliss. As long as you know that frames are frames and seconds are seconds, because time, every frame is 1/60th of a second, because these games are running at 60 frames a second. I aspire to know when it's the game and not my own execution. This is how you know. This is how you know. You have to know your frames. If you know your frames, then you'll know it's the game and not you. This is why I can tell when it's lagging. I can tell when it's lagging by 1 frame. I can feel it because it feels different. Some people can't tell, or they're not confident in the execution, and they're like, I don't know, maybe it was me, maybe it was the game. No, I know. It was the fucking game because I know my execution's on point. I know when it's on point. I know how to make it on point. It's not the game. It's not me, it's the game. And that's how I find out. Okay, trades. This works the same way in both games. So what happens when 2 attacks reach their active frames at the same time? In this case, player 1 attacks 2 frames later than player 2. Same attack. Both attacks become active on the same frame. So player 2 is waiting, 2 frames, boom, active. Same point, time. Different attacks. All right, what happens? The rule, okay, now this part, ignore. This is Virtua Fighter-ism. In Tekken, this is not the case. This is just means they're going to trade. You both get hit in Tekken. In Virtua Fighter, that doesn't happen. I'm going to tell you this because I think it's cool. So the rule for Virtua Fighter, when two attacks collide or trade on the same frame, 4 things happen. Potentially. There's 4 decisions, there's 4 points, and there are 4 decisions that have to get, you have to go through 4 points of logic. The first one is, the attack that does the highest damage wins. Number 2, if the damage is equal, then the attack with the slower execution wins. Number 3, if the damage and execution are both equal, then the player with 50 points life less than the opponent wins. Otherwise, you trade, like you do in Tekken. So there are 3 points that you have to go through before you get a trade. But in Tekken, you just trade. Get fucked. Which is why when I was first learning Tekken frame taps, I was like, wait, what? Why am I getting hit? The fuck? What do you mean there's no logic behind this? I just got to trade? I have to just eat it? I wish Tekken had this. I really do. Oh, okay, so that's it for this part. So this part of how games handle trades, every game is different. Some games don't handle it this way. You have to look into it yourself. Damn, we really get it easier in Tekken? When it comes to this, you do. Well, it's in some ways it's harder because you don't have this. Like, I don't have to worry about some things because I can just do a move that's slower than yours, and I'll win. Or does more damage, and I'll win. I would have been pissed if we hit the exact same frame, but the guy said, "Nah, your move weak." Yeah, you move too weak. I play Tekken, Soul Calibur, and Guilty Gear Strive, and they just trade. But trying to consider all that in the VF Mac must be mad. You just have to know all your data. VF trade mechanics is more complex for some reason. Oh, for some reason, I like it this way. I love it. I love this. Hey, Screams. Let's close that. All right. Buffering. Okay. Yeah, input buffer. So here we have 2 different sheets. One for Tekken. This is Tekken. Here you're looking at right now. Copy and paste. This here is Virtua Fighter buffer. Let's go over Tekken's first. No. We're gonna go over Virtua Fighter first. They're very similar, but they're little differences. And I'm a VFer, so we're gonna go over VF first. So in Virtua Fighter, the size of input buffer is 12 frames. Now in these diagrams, the listed 10 frame input buffer should be listed as 12. This is why I had my buffer window screwed up for so long. I thought, because these all show 10, but really it's 12 in Virtua Fighter. In Tekken, it's 8. Input buffer in Tekken is 8 frames long. Okay? Different games have different input buffer windows. It's important to know what they are. So the buffer, when people in Tekken say, oh, the input buffer is generous. Fam, I'm used to a 12 frame buffer, okay? That's a whole ass 8, 9, 10, 11. That's a whole ass 4 frames extra. I get to buffer my shit in. Do not tell me Tekken's buffer is fucking generous, because it's not. 12 frames is generous. Fuck out of here with that bullshit. But, you know, Street Fighter's buffer window is much smaller than both our games. Skill issues. No, total skill issue. I just wanted to pop off a little bit because people keep telling me in my chat, oh, Tekken's input buffer is so generous. I'm like, no, it's not. It's not buffer. This is generous. Okay, this is what generous looks like. All right, so let me stop putting you on fire and on blast. So I'm gonna read this out. 8 frames is like nice. Yeah. Imagine 12. But there's a reason why Tekken's buffer is shorter than VF's, and we're gonna go into it because this will also be relevant for Calibur and relevant for DOA. So the way Virtua Fighter's buffer works is the way it works in. Normally it's 4 frames, up to 7 frames in some cases. There you go. So yeah, input buffers are much more generous in Virtua Fighter. So basically, we have two systems. Systems with a guard button and system with no guard button. They will handle input buffers differently. This is still included in the frame discussion because this is how you build your frame traps as well. There are several good reasons why input buffer is good. Street Fighter is slowly trending towards jabs like 3D Fighter is awesome. All right, let's continue. So ordinarily, when you're just standing there and free to move, the instant you press a button, something on screen happens. For example, you press punch, your character will immediately punch. But what about times when you aren't free to move? Such as when you're guarding the opponent's attack, or you're recovering from your own attack. What happens to your button press then? Are they ignored until you're free to move again? Well, this is where the input buffer comes in. During these times, During these times, when you're frozen, unable to move, in Tekken, when you have simple display on, the characters look blue. Notice how here you see blue as well? Same color description, okay? In Tekken, also we notice when your character is red, just like how earlier we said red, those are your active frames. And when you're green, that's a startup, okay? These colors. Thank you for the subscription, Peach. Let's go. It's a subscription, Peach. Thank you. So during times when you're frozen and unable to move, any buttons you input will get placed into a buffer or a queue. This is called the input buffer. All games work this way. The number's different though. In Virtua Fighter, the input buffer lasts for 12 frames, meaning what this essentially means. Now, ignore 10. It's not 10, it's 12. They wrote 12. They fucked it up. What this essentially means is that any buttons entered during the last 12 frames of your recovery, or in Tekken, last 8, will get executed the very first frame you're able to move. Okay? Let's look at 2 examples. These ads shall not keep me from your wisdom. I also love it here. Glad to thank you. So what this essentially means is that any buttons, I already said that. Sorry, here's an example, I think. This is just showing you the same thing. Button pressed within the 12 frame buffer window, it'll come out right away. Cool. Hey, Plant Daddy. Let's say you've just guarded an attack, which put you into guard stun for a long time. Just before you're about to recover, you are free to move. You press P. Now, provided you press P within the input buffer, then your character will successfully punch the very frame you recover. By using the input buffer, this way, you're executing your punch as early as possible with no frames wasted. Note to the audience, this is very important. Again, this is another part. Wait, hold on. Is that why I mistime my punch because input buffer is less forgiving? Perhaps. The input buffer is 8 frames. In Tekken, it's 12. In Virtua Fighter, it's 12. In Tekken, it's 8. I need to learn this. I have an idea of it and studied diligently to get my characters to master rank, but I got lazy. Yeah. You have to master this, or your frames won't matter. Your frame taps won't matter. If you're executing your attacks late because you're not using the input buffer, get fucked, basically. So it's bad to react too fast after you're hit. Well, not necessarily. It's bad to hit the button outside the input buffer. This is like when someone does a move against you that's really plus on block, and you try to jab them after, but nothing comes out. You attacked early. Exactly. You pressed your button outside the input buffer window. That's what's happening there. Knowing this kinds of stuff lets you self-diagnose problems in your game. Helps explain to you why are things happening on the screen the way they are. And unless you understand this and the system for your specific game, because these rules apply in all fighting games, but there's slight variations on it. You know, some games have a 12 frame buffer. Some games have an 8 frame buffer. Some games have fucking 4 or no buffer. Like in Super Turbo, there's no buffer there at all. This might be a good idea. This might be a bit of a sidetrack question. How do you suggest testing drilling inputs to encourage good execution? I have a good tip for that too. There are drills, yeah. What you do is you set the computer. Well, once you know your frames, actually hang around. We'll come back to that. Remind me. Remind me when we remind me to answer that later. Also, I don't know if you cover this yet, but I feel like some moves are unsafe, but their block sum makes them look safer plus. Yeah, that's why knowing your frames is important. You have to just know the numbers sometimes. That's definitely a thing. Some moves are purposely designed like that. Yeah. Okay. So, let's say you just guard an attack, which put you in guard stun for a long time. Kind of like the example you just told me about. Just before you're about to recover, you're free to move, you press P. I already read that. Fuck. I'll read it again. Now, provided you press P within the input buffer, then your character will successfully punch the very frame they recover. By using the input buffer this way, you're executing your punch attack as early as possible, with no frames wasted. Consider an example where you first waited, visually verifying that you recovered before you input P. This ends up wasting valuable frames before the punch even begins to execute. So here, this still applies. Actually, this is still good. Now consider another example, like when you fuck it up. This time, the little dotted spot, that's the... Oh, you can't see my cursor. I just realized that. Okay, cool. You can see my cursor. Little dotted line, that's the input buffer window. This is outside the buffer input window, so it's not going to come out. This time, even though you press P, it is entered during the recovery, but it's before the 12-frame input buffer. If you're thinking in Tekken terms, before the 8-frame input buffer window. Since the input is too early, the punch does not get processed when you recover. Have you ever had one of those moments where you swore you pressed the attack button but nothing came out? Usually mid-combo, or after guarding your opponent's attack, chances are your input was too early. With knowledge of the input buffer, you can input your commands ahead of time, especially when you're doing something else, such as as soon as you recover, your input will be processed. This can help you speed up your play and ensure that your commands are executed as fast as possible. This is required for fast play. You are unable to play fast if you don't do this. You have to play this way in order to play fast. So there's no other way. More on this in the next sections, okay? Catch up. So mashing is good in this case. Not necessarily mashing, but pressing it at the right time. You could mash, but mashing gives you other problems as well. Especially in Tekken, because there's no way to clear your input buffer. We'll get to that next. Let me catch up. Not all the time, because if you mash before the input buffer, you get nothing. You understand now? Okay, cool. Best way I practice is Brock Rage. Okay, yeah, you got it. Wait, is this how I get stuck in VF at crucial moments? Interesting, yes. That's why pros look cracked. They don't waste frames, yeah, because they know the input buffer. If you don't know this, you can't play well. Period. In the story. No way. You don't. And typically, input buffer on the end of attacks, that you can play by feel. Like, I don't know the recovery frames of my attacks either. This I just feel out. I kind of know when I get to act again, and I hit a button like a few games before that. So this is easy to do by feel. You don't have to memorize it. And yeah, this is fine. But if you're having issues, this is how you diagnose it. This is how you solve the problem. In order to fix an issue, you have to know what the problem is. If you didn't know this, input buffer could be a thing. You can't fix that problem. You'd be like, well, why are moves not coming out? Well, because you don't have the input buffer knowledge. Now, how games treat certain kinds of actions within the input buffer changes based on the game and the game system. It can even change between versions of a game, like number versions. So we'll get into that too. But this is the basics. Guard buffering, okay? Now, this is unique to any game with a guard button. DOA, Soul Calibur, VF. I don't know if Mortal Kombat counts, because they have a back. You can hold back there too. So I actually don't know. But I know those 3 games. Thank you for the scub. Trap Music 96, 93. Okay, following on from the input buffer, you can use the guard button to hold your character steady while you buffer commands. Then release on the final command to execute it. An example is Akira performing a super dashing elbow where he jumps forward and goes like BAM! Forward, 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 P. If you're standing idle and proceed to enter this command, chances are you'll see Akira twitch forward as you're entering forward, 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 forward. In Tekken, Let's say you're trying to do a while running 2, right? That's forward, 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 same input. This is exactly handled the same way. And you'll see the same weird thing happen if you don't buffer it. In VF, if you were to just do this forward, forward, forward raw, you'd see Akira dash forward and then do an elbow. If you were to not do instant while run in Tekken, you'd see your character run a little bit forward and then do the move. But, I'll go over it. So depending on how fast or slow your input is, you may even see Akira start to dash forward. Or your character in Tekken start to dash forward because the forward input is also a forward dash. It is only until you complete the last input, forward P, that Akira will begin to execute his attack. So let's say movement occurs here. Forward, forward, movement's happening, then P, attack comes out. As shown above, you'll notice that you're actually wasting time while you input the command. Not only that, but from the idle situation, your twitching and dash animation may alert your opponent that something is coming. This is the problem. This is the critical flaw, possibly eliminating the element of surprise. So a 14-frame attack, which could potentially take 21 frames, as shown right above, or more, to actually execute if you count from the time you start to see Akira moving. So how do we fix this in games with guard buttons? By using the guard buffering. You can hold Akira steady and unleash SDE from a starting point. So in Virtua Fighter, you hold guard, forward, 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 your character doesn't move, and the input buffer holds it, and then P. Attack's gonna come out. As long as your forwards are all within the input buffer, you're fine. So to guard better, buffer SDE, enter da-da-da. The benefit this has is that you're guarding for most of the input, which may protect you from any quick attacks from your opponent, as well as disguising the fact that the move is about to be unleashed. This latter part is super important. If you don't know this, you're going to be giving away what your intentions are to your opponent, and you'll be like, well, why do they keep blocking this? Why do they keep dodging this? Because they can see you moving. By the time your opponent sees the move, the attack is already in their fucking face. Recovery buffering. This is the same. Thank you for following, accept. Recovery buffering. This concept is the same in both games. The numbers are different, but the concept is the same. Thank you for following, UG. The same concept holds true for buffering commands while you're recovering from something. Let's say as Akira, you want to perform forward, forward, forward P into down, back, back, forward P. It's a combo. How the hell are you going to do that? It's a lot of inputs to do very quickly. Well, you must use the input buffer to do that. Look at this little chart here. Notice that the double palm, down, back, forward, P is double palm. You go like, ha! Ha! That's what that is. Okay? So notice that the double palm starts executing in the fastest time possible. Thank you, Paul. Which is as soon as the SDE has finished recovering. Also notice that the initial down-back motion for the double palm is earlier than 12 frames. This is outside the buffer window. Well, what the fuck? This part varies from game to game. So we're talking about Virtua Fighter right now. We're going to talk about Tekken in a second because this part changes sometimes. See your own game system to understand this specifically. If you're looking at this from like DOA or like Soul Calibur, everyone's a little different on this. And these differences severely impact high-level play. Like, these are the things that dictate how your game plays. 100%. Changes your tactics, changes the frame, it changes everything. Everything is changed based on how your game handles this kind of stuff. Ray, this is such a wonderful channel. It's really amazing. Great music, many wonderful talking points, all around positivity. How am I just finding about this? Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. I appreciate that. Welcome. Okay. So, the down back motion for the double palm is earlier than 12 frames before the SDE recovery ends. This is fine because there are less than 10 frames between each input of the double palm. And the final P input is within 12 frames of the end of recovery. That's where my 10 frame comes from. I knew there was 10 frames somewhere. Okay, so this is very VF focused right now. It's fine. You're learning Virtua Fighter right now. The granddaddy of them all, or the grandmother of them all. If you wait until SDE finishes recovery before you start to enter the double palm, you'll be wasting valuable frames with your input and risk the double palm missing altogether and causing your combo to fail. Like as you see below. Too late. Get fucked. And so basically here, okay, then go over it. So in VF, looking at these, you can see it. Let me make it bigger. Ah, too big. Here. So that first arrow, and the third arrow, fourth and fifth. Those have to be within 10 frames of each other. And the final input, so the forward and punch, that has to be within 12 frames, within the final 12 frames of your recovery. Or else you won't get the attack to come out frame 1. Now, I'm a little disappointed they don't talk about something else, which I thought they were going to talk about, which is called 1 frame delaying and how not to get that. But, oh well, it doesn't matter. Thanks for following one. Wing. Dalian. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm getting... Right. Give me a second. Okay, we're back. Buffer cancel. This has been blowing my cheeks up in Tekken. I am missing this so much. DOA has this too. In DOA they call it free cancels. So you can cancel a string of a commands being buffered by entering G into the sequence. For example, if with Pi, you all know Pi, right? Pi-chan. If you enter punch, 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 guard, then back kick, you'll get the triple punch combo, followed by her back kick, separate command. This is the fastest way of combining 2 separate strings of attacks that would otherwise combine into one combo. In this case, Pi has a punch, 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 back kick. That's an attack for her. She has that's a string. So after you do punch, 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 if you want to get back kick, which is a separate attack on its own, and you don't want the back kick string ender, you have to press guard to cancel the buffer. It clears it, and it will no longer receive the. It will no longer do the string. It'll just stop it. Can't stay, unfortunately. This channel is Godsend. I'm grateful I found it. Thanks for coming by, Huckleberry. This is the same in Soul Calibur. I'm like 95% sure, same in Soul Calibur. I'm 100% sure it's the exact same in DOA. So basically, any game with a guard button handles input buffers this way. So this is what we refer to in Virtua Fighter as cleaning the input buffer window. This is what you do. You press guard, everything's gone. Whatever you did, gone. Tekken kind of uses neutral as this, but I don't quite understand the rules yet, and it's not nearly as robust as a guard. There's some quirks. Okay, end of that part. Now, we're going to talk about Tekken. Because Tekken has some quirks. Some very big quirks that you must know. All right? So in Tekken, the input buffer... Oh, let me paste this in the chat for you so you can follow. Boom. The input buffer allows players to send inputs when they can't act, such as during recovery or black stun, and have the input act as if they were sent exactly when they can act first. This is what enables frame advantage to play out in a consistent way, since both players are both almost guaranteed to get frame perfect timing on their follow-ups. For example, it allows -10 moves to be punished by I-10 attacks without frame perfect inputs. Timing. So how do you do it? Different than BF. The input buffer is 8 frames long in Tekken. This gives an effective 9-frame window to input a frame perfect link. For example, the following inputs both do a generic 1 jab, twice in a row, as quickly as possible. First example, here. Where's my marker? Boom. 1 input. Blue. What? Uses, I guess that's startup here. Blue startup. Yellow, active frame, 1 active frame. 10th frame, active. And then green, recovery frames. You have between 11 to 19, you're in recovery. Then, oh, I see what they did here. Okay, I see. This is actually pretty cool. So you're in recovery technically from 11 all the way until 27. That's the recovery time. And the last 8 frames of your recovery, that's the buffer window for the next attack. If you press your button during that window, whether it's the right after the window's over or right before when it first starts, your next attack will happen on the 28th frame. So you really want to play fast by hitting buttons within the recovery frames of your attack. Let me guess here. Quick question about punish. If an opponent attacks with you with an 11 frame, negative 11 string, do you punish with a frame that's lower than 11 in return? No, you punish with a frame that is exactly 11. 11 frames. I mean, you could if you want to, but you'd be wasting frames. Especially on block, the designers just made the game negative 11 because they want you to use an 11 frame attack to punish them with. It's balanced around that. If you don't use it, you're making the opponent stronger. This is doing so much for me. I love you process and tactfulness. You even use smart goals to explain timing and Thank you. Unfortunately, I guess it would have been too many squares. Probably you're right. Okay, so that's that part. Now, more Tekken uniqueness. Motion inputs. Some motion inputs can be buffered. Some. For these, the 8 frame window is only concerned with the last input in the sequence. With the timing window for the motion input itself, independent of the input buffer. What? I'm learning this too. What? For example, Kazumi's back, neutral, forward 2 can at most be input in 15 frames. So first frame, back, 15th frame, forward and number 2. So direction and button. So the back can be buffered, i.e. input before having recovered, for up to 22 frames. If the forward input is also input in the first frame of the buffer. Holy shit. Really? Really? So here we have 1 star stands for neutral. Nothing's happening. Meaning they pressed 1 button. This is outside the buffer window, I guess, as an example. They press back, then forward and 2 on the very first purple means recovery. Input buffer in the recovery. Thank you for following Mula. So they get their attack here. Well, we're going to try this in training mode later. After we're done, we're going to go in training mode and try this out. This is news to me. I'm having a hard time digesting. This part I am too. This part doesn't really make sense to me either. Because it's not super clear. But whatever, it's fine. We'll figure it out later. Unbufferable moves. Because, okay, here's why it's confusing. Because here they're saying, for motion inputs like back forwards, the game's only the buffer window only cares about your last attack. Delayed hit, this isn't delayed though, it's happening right away. You're buffering your attack, you're still getting an immediate attack. What they're saying is when it's a back forward, for instance, you will, so long as your last input, directional and button, is within the 8 frames of the recovery, you will get your attack to come out right away. No frames wasted. That's what they're saying. What I don't know the answer to is, well, what about, like, how early can you do the forward, the first back? That's going to go under unbufferable moves. The buffer window, well, okay, I'll read it again. Some motion inputs can be buffered. For example, for these, the 8-frame window is only concerned with the last input in the sequence. With the timing window for the motion input, meaning the directional, independent from the input buffer. So what it's saying is it can be whenever you want. But how long? I don't know. What they're saying here is Kazumi's back, neutral, forward 2 can at most be input in 15 frames, which tells me that the biggest gap you're allowed to have between your motion, your first motion and your second is 15. That's what I'm hearing. Let's write this down. Motion. I'm going to call it directional inputs. Directionals. We're going to copy this. It's a little sus. We have Kasumi as an example. We'd rather have some character. Well, yeah, this is from the old game. But what this is implying is that you have 15 frames to buffer a move. Okay, let's move along. Continue. Let's close that. Unbufferable moves. We're not done yet, though. We got some more situational things. Frames is basically speed. Frames is time, not speed. Well, it's everything. It's speed and time. It's both. It depends what the context is. If you're talking about what are the frames of execution, then it is speed. If you're talking about what are the frames, how many frames do you have to do a certain thing, I guess you could think of it as speed too. But it's more of a unit of time. Frame is time. I somewhat understand it as needs to be 15 minutes in the bud, execute. Is that what execution means in your Ling data sheet? Exactly. Exactly. All right, let's go over this part because you need this is the second situation that's important for Tekken and it's unique to Tekken. So unbufferable moves. You can't buffer everything. As a general rule, moves that aren't bufferable are those which come out of a stance. If you aren't in that stance while recovering, you can't buffer the moves in that stance. In addition, for most stances entered by motion inputs, entering the stance also can't be buffered. Moves with one input immediately after the other, like Yoshimitsu's 3 forces in Tekken 7, usually can't be fully buffered, as they are technically a cancel. You can't cancel a move you haven't started yet. A move not being bufferable means that it can't easily be used as a punisher, follow-up, or counterattack, or in combos, since getting the move to come out may require near frame perfect timing. Well, rip some, because this is a general rule. It's not a flat rule, it's a general rule, meaning there are exceptions. That's where character matchup knowledge becomes a thing. Dash attacks. This is the last thing. It's very important. Where I was struggling with. For the generic dash stance. Dash is considered a stance, y'all. I'll go over what stances are in this game in a second. For generic dash stance entered by forward, the first forward can't be buffered. But the second, the first forward can be buffered, but the second cannot. This obeys the rules for motion inputs as above. So the first forward can be buffered for up to 20 frames. Oh, really? There's our number. We have to have it now. Why? Hold on. Ah! Was there 22 earlier? Okay, back up, as that's the biggest gap that's normally permitted. So again, we're hearing that there's normally, meaning there could be exceptions, right? Dash attacks require the second forward be held for at least 1 frame. I didn't know that before pressing the attack button. This is probably why I keep having problems. Fuck. So it takes a minimum of 2 frames to input such a move from a bufferable situation, i.e. adding 1 frame to the input. For example, Lydia's forward hold plus 2 is I13, but it can only be buffered with but it can only be at best punish a negative 14 move because you need that extra frame for the input. So forward, 3. Right, forward, 3 forwards, or even 2 forwards. The second forward takes up a frame because you can't buffer that second forward. It has to come when it moves when you're out of stance. Oh shoot! I figured that out with trial and error. Yeah, a lot of people do and have. We're gonna say. I thought this was the case. This part is the same in Virtua Fighter. You also add a frame as well. There is a way to however, in Virtua Fighter, there's a way to get around this, which involves using the input buffer in a very specific kind of way. There is not a way to get around this in Tekken. Eat that. You just gotta eat it. Get fucked. Unfortunately. Oh well. Okay. Any questions about this part? Does that mean 4443 would have 2 extra frames of startup? I don't know actually. So this is saying dash attacks. Is forward what they're talking about here? I think dash attacks require the second forward to be held for at least 1 frame before pressing the attack. So it takes a minimum of 2 frames to input such a move from a bufferable situation, i.e. adding 1 frame to the input. For example, Lydia's forward. See, what I don't like is that their example isn't a dash attack. It's just forward 2. It's not forward 2. Get fucked. Get fucked. We'll figure it out in the game. Yeah, I think the example they provided wasn't exactly reflective of the example of what they were describing. So it's a little vague. All right, here we go. What are stances? A stance, this is for Tekken. A stance is anything that changes what moves can be done. This is a broad definition for things like rage, dash, sidestep. Stances are temporary if they lapse on their own, or stable if they don't. Stable stances are often considered real stances. Stances can coincide with states such as parry or crush, and may have an evasive hurt box. This is usually thought of as a stance putting the player into those states. A stance might have a manual transition like AOP, optional transition done from a specific input after certain moves, like when you do with a ling punch, down punch, hold back, put you in hypnotist if you want to, or mandatory transition. Happens automatically when doing certain moves. It could also be forced by an opponent, like being in forced crouch or back turn. Generally, stances give the player access to better mix-ups at the cost of some defensive ability or predictability, like Leroy's Hermit stance has a strong plus-on block mid and 2 strong lows, but he can't guard, backdash, or step block. However, some stances like Lee's Hitman stance, or that's why when the person said Hitman stance, I was like, bro, Ling isn't a Hitman. You mean Lee's Hitman stance? I guess they meant the wrong word. Or in Eddie's negative RLX are mainly used for the evasive properties. Their weird hurt boxes make it difficult to start pressure after blocking anything that can transition to them because their counterattacks can easily whiff. The most infamous is AOP, whose manual transition can evade mid almost instantly. I love it. Okay. I swap mains again? Cool. You're a wonderful asset to the FGC. Thank you, Randy. Okay. Blessed AOP. Now, we're going to talk a little bit more about frames. Now, we've talked about input buffer. I've told you some basics about frames. We're going to do a little more using Tekken specifically because Tekken has some uniqueness to it sometimes. Let's find out. So, for those of you who like time, a frame is a unit of time roughly equal to 16.67 milliseconds. Tekken runs at 60 frames a second, like most fighting games do. So when we talk about time, it's more precise to talk in terms of frames than real time, because that's how the game understands it. A frame in this context doesn't refer to an image rendered on the screen, although for most practical purposes, it can be considered the same thing. Okay. So, startup, time before the attack is active. That's the blue. Active, time when they can hit the opponent. That's the little yellow there. And recovery, time after the attack was active. Every move spends a certain amount of frames in each of these. The attacker cannot guard during any of them. For example, generic jab has 9 frames to startup, 1 active frame, and 17 recovery. Actually, you know what? We're going to skip this because we already did it. I think we're fine. Skip that. Tekken changes. Instant while running. Let's go over this. So, more buffer, more input frame stuff. Instant while running is a technique for doing running moves at close range. Closer range than at which a character starts running by just pressing forward, neutral, forward. Tekken 8 changes. Tekken 8 introduces a far more lenient timing for while running moves at point blank, granting additional time in the running state once you hit the opponent. This greatly lowers the execution barrier. What website is this? Here's the next one. I'll link it. It's Wavu. I've been linking every page as I go along. Granting additional time in the running state once you hit the opponent. This greatly lowers the execution barrier for including while running moves as part of your core game plan. Let's play this video. Watch. Did that work? There it is. Okay. While running moves can be input at any point during its running state, allowing for a far more lenient timing than Tekken 7. Some while running attacks may still reward precise timing with extra damage, such as Blue Spark Dragonoff's while running 2. Didn't know that. So let's look at this some more. Despite the name, instant while running has nothing to do with being fast. Fast is possible instant while running, minimal input. 1 frame forward, neutral, 2nd frame, 3rd frame forward, 4th frame is neutral, 5th frame forward, 6th frame is 2. So neutral is required. This doesn't look fun at all. This isn't about fun, it's about getting good. Everything about getting good is not fun. For things that require difficult skills, breaking through ceilings, sometimes you have to do some things that aren't very fun. If you do not want to do those things, you might not really want to get good. But you don't have to. Just saying. You might not really want to get good. I wish you did this for Street Fighter 6. Fun what happens afterwards. Yes. This is eating your Wheaties. Eating your veggies. I like veggies though. But it's like eating something you don't want to eat. This is lifting your weights. Picking up Street Fighter anytime soon. I played Street Fighter 6 earlier. But I like Tekken 8 way more. Street Fighter does have a famous play like this too. It's actually quite good. It's very good on this. I'm just catching up with anything here. Nexion, thank you. Have fun with the rank grind. I'll be cutting this later. Okay, continues. Also, make sure my music's not playing copyright music. We're good. Okay. Oh! Let's change this music up. Okay. Oh, you're right. You know, this is the delay gratification part until you become a lab monster. I agree. This will all make someone better, but this process doesn't look fun at all. This part depends. Depends. I found this very fun. I find knowing this extremely fun. But I also like being good, and I like knowing how to get good. This is how you get there. Is this going to be a YouTube video? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I'll cut this separately. Once you apply it, that's when it becomes better. Yes, right. Once you apply this, it's very fun. But you have to know this first. Yeah, you literally, you have to know this. You might figure it out with your hands by just playing a lot. And a lot of people have. A lot of the older players who got good before we had this information available to us figured it out just because they played it. But they know this. They may not be able to explain it to you, but they know it. They may not know how to tell you. They may not know why it works. They'll say it just works. I don't know. It just works. I figured it out. But us, newer players, we don't have to learn it that way. We can learn it this way. And it's way faster. Why would you waste your time trying to figure something out that's written down for you? It's wasting your fucking time. You're wasting your time. But if you find that fun, then fine. You know, do it that way. And you still have to practice after. You still have to practice after this. Here's the next part: the slowest possible instant while running. Minimal input. Forward. 20 frames pass. Forward. Another 12 frames pass. Forward. Huh. The key to consistently doing instant while running moves at point blank range is to press the attack button 1 frame before the third F input. Fascinating. Wait a second. This is unique. I'm also learning here too. While instant running. I know chat's covering my thing. Can I just copy this? Does this work? Damn it. No, it doesn't. Fuck. What about this? What about this? No, it won't work either. Fuck. So we'll say forward for frame 1, and then forward on frame 21, and then forward on frame 31, and then 2 on frame 32. So the first 2 forwards are within 20 frames, but the time between the second forward and the last forward is 10 frames. That's interesting. You learn to make an instinct before transferring it to muscle memory. It allows you to think less and observe more. You are effectively cutting down the amount of brain power needed to execute. Yes, you are. Daigo made a segment on thinking in this manner. Being able to understand the fundamentals of things will allow you to explore the theorize in different ways. Yes, Daigo and I have very similar process. I'm also a theoretical fighter. Most VFers are, who are good. You kind of have to be. There's no way around it. You'll hit a ceiling otherwise. This is another way people hit ceilings. This is part of why Virtua Fighter players tend to be very good when they do transition to another game, because we already understand this. We just need to figure out how to apply it in your game. But like, if you're good at Virtua Fighter, you can play any game you want once you learn it. Whether you can execute the things, that's a whole different story. But the hardest part of most games is this. I like that I came to fighting games from card games, but learning then probably breaks them down to a turn-based for Theory Fighter. Just wait. We're going to get to game theory later. This is where we end. And this, oh my God, is amazing. We're not there yet, though. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 more tabs to get through. The final tab is game theory. Lionheart was saying VF is the hardest FGC played. Yeah, because I still think it is. Actually, it depends it depends what's hard for you. But let's not get into that. We're talking about frames today. We stay focused. Let's look at some more examples here. Attack button is pressed too early. You get You get forward 2 instead. Forward. 1, 2, 3. Neutrals. 7, 8, 9. Forward. I guess they're holding forward here. So it's forward, neutral, forward, held, neutral, and forward 2. The attack button was pressed too early because this attack was framed on the same frame. If this forward was on frame 12, it would have worked. Successful instant while run. Forward, neutral, 1 frame, then forward and button. You get it. Another example. Button too late. You get forward 2 instead. Applies only to point blank range. Forward, neutral, forward for 3 more frames, neutral, and forward for 2 frames and 2. Really? That's how that works? This isn't too late. I sometimes want this. I'm getting a forward +2 on purpose from dash state. without having to cancel. So forward, 3 frames, neutral, 3 frames, forward, 3 frames, neutral, 3 frames, forward, 2, forward plus 2. Oh, God, I love this song. God, I love this song. It's so good. Oh, this song is so good. I didn't know it was on here. Okay, the attack button 1 frame after the 3rd forward input only required point blank range. At any range besides point blank range, there is no need to input the attack 1 frame after the 3rd forward input as shown in the video. Play the video. Let's play it again. The playlist, I posted it in my chat when I was playing at the beginning. It's in my chat. Someone might have it and they can share it, but it's in my chat. It's in my chat from earlier. Wait, no, this one isn't. This isn't from this isn't from my playlist. I just look shit up. I know some channels that are safe. There it is. At any range besides point blank range, there is no need to input the attack button 1 frame after the 3rd F. I've shown it in this video. I didn't know that either. The input overlay was modified to show inputs on per frame basis. As you can see, one of the frames of the video is that this one here. Forward. I'm confused. What? Dragunov did instant while running 2 at very close range, but it did not enter the 2nd input, the 2 input 1 frame after the 3rd forward. It only entered 2 frames after the 3rd forward. Let's watch this again. The I while running technique makes use of how the game goes about moving you to a running state and stopping you from running when you hit the opponent with your dash. Rather than stopping you from doing a run at all, the game always switches to a running state after you press 3rd forward and only switches your character back to a standing state after it hits the opponent with its model. That's different in Tekken 8. So there's always at least 1 frame when you are in running state. Interesting. Hold on, I have to go back. I'm right back. Enjoy the music. Okay, we're back. Wait, no, let's watch it right now. Oh, God, I love this song. God, I love this song so good. Oh, this song is so good. I didn't know it was on here. Okay. Oh my God. I love that. Thank you for sharing. Okay, any questions since I've been gone? Spurk Daddy, just link it if you can. Catching up. Any questions I might have missed? It's all relative to the third forward input on the frame forward. I think so. I think so? The running state can also be larger if you're not running into your opponent. Thank you for following the maximal. Okay, purpose. Running moves are powerful. For example, Kizumi's while running 2 deals 25 damage with a knockdown and wall splats. I'm going to slow down because I'm reading too fast. The only other scythe mid she has with better payoffs is forward 4, which is slower, shorter range, easier to step, and worse on block. But she has while running 1, which is +7 on block and deals even more damage. So rather than making running moves fast, the purpose of instant while running is to make them possible at ranges that is less than the range at which your character starts running on its own. Rather than entering forward neutral forward hold, they're at their best at around range 2, which is possible, but it's possible when you go for one that your opponent does a dash block. At the same time, if this happens and you don't do instant while running, you don't get your running move. I think this is Tekken 7 Pacific. Even when input quickly, running moves are slow. The input still adds 5 frames minimum to the startup, and more realistically 10 plus. Instant while running makes running moves slightly faster when you press the attack button at the first frame of your run compared to 2 or 3 frames into it, as one might often do. Overusing instant while running at close range without a read on your opponent's timing is good way to get a counter hit, but having the option to use running moves in this situation is also useful, especially when at the wall. So this might also give us an answer to dragging off instant while running in your face over and over again, even though he's +7 or whatever he's plus at, whatever he plus he is. If he's buffering it with like 5 frames, you might be able to jab him out of the follow up. I don't know. Buffered. You can buffer forward neutral inputs of instant while running. This makes it faster and thus more of a threat when combined with a big frame advantage. Doing this is a bit harder, as now the second forward input should only be entered as your character recovers. If you press the second forward too early before your character recovers, you'll get the wrong moves, and later will be slower. Same situation, actually. Does that make sense? I'll take your silence as a yes. Okay, next. Unreactable. Is that true for Tekken 8? I believe so. I think you won't be taken out of instant while running as quickly, because in Tekken 7, as soon as you touch your opponent, you're taken out of the warning state. In Tekken 8, you have a few frames. I don't know how many. But I know it's one of the differences. Typically, you can jab or sidestep running move into running move or on block. Okay. So now, I've told you, now you understand frames. You understand what they are. You understand how they apply to inputs and all that jazz. You've gotten the basics of frames now. You understand them. This portion is not going to be more about implications of knowing these frames. Now you know how this works. So unreactable. An attack that is too fast for us to react to. I will paste this into the chat right now. Bam. Thanks for following Marcus. If you're a beginner, it might surprise you, but most fighting game attacks are unreactable. Online reaction tests will tell you that an average human's reaction time is about 15 frames, and virtually all of your standard normal attacks will have startup under this theoretical limit. In 2D games, a lot of fighting games in 3D are over 15 frames. And virtually all of your standard normal attacks will have a startup way under this theoretical react limit. Again, not really the case in 3D games, but whatever. This means even the world's best players will need to just block preemptively a lot of the time. Again, 3D games are different. But it's even more difficult than that, because it's so easy to overwhelm your mental stack. When playing, reacting to 15 frames in a fighting game is almost impossible. In fact, even world-class players will miss anti-airing jumps regularly. And these jumps can take 45 frames. That's several times over the limit. This is why most mix-ups in fighting games, the developer wants you to try and react to will give you way more time than 15 frames to see it coming. Usually 20 to 25 frames is a common. Anything less than that is just really fucking hard. So, what does this mean? This gives you a clue as to what numbers to look for when you're looking at your frames. Execution. If you see a move that's, 20 to 25 frames, that means they can react to that if they're really good. You should know what those moves are, because those are the moves you can test the reactions of your opponent with. If they're less than that and they're blocking it, they're probably either option selecting you or there's or they're reading you and they're just blocking it. So this also gives you information about your opponent too, and what they're good at, what they're not good at. You don't need to talk to them and figure this out. Let them show you. But they can only show you if you know your own moves and you know how long your moves are. And this information isn't like saying good players are just better than others. No, this is saying these are the limits of human capabilities, period, more or less. Are some people better at it? Yeah, but they're really rare, so don't worry about them. You ever thought about testing your opponent's reaction time? Oh yes, you should. When I'm saying to myself, I'm gonna run this and see what happens, do it with a move that's slow, not too slow, 20, 25 frames is good, and see whether they can react to it, hit you out of it. If they can't, then you're gonna run that shit. If they can, pull it back, dial it back, use a faster move. Or an alternative thing you can do is utilize their mental stack. So mental stack, what is that? You know what? Let's have them tell us. Mental stack. How much focus a player can devote to different strategies in a match. It's common that a player will struggle to do seemingly easy tasks because their mind is trying to focus on multiple things at once. For example, a player might be trying to focus on footsies on the ground, while at the same time watching for a jump so they can anti-air, while at the same time trying to hit confirm a basic poke. Each task is doable by itself. But after trying to balance all these attacks for a while, the opponent jumps and you don't anti-air because their mental bandwidth was simply too taxed to handle it. So managing your mental stack is something that takes a lot of practice and time. Don't feel bad if you practice something in training mode for hours, yet struggle to implement it in real matches when it's not your only focus. It also explains why very good players get hit by theoretically reactable mix-ups, because people aren't robots. You can't be ready for everything. I'll give you a tip here. So mental stack is what we call in psychology working memory. That's what that is. It's called your working memory. Or you can call it your short-term memory. Those things are slightly different, but they're related. Short-term memory is a little different. So think of mental stack as one's working memory. It's how many things you can hold in your mind at the same time and keep track of at the same time. Now, a part of skill development is that more skilled players... Let me back up the explanation, actually. When you're new, your mental stack is full all the time. Mental stack is about plus or minus 2, 7 items. So really 5 plus or minus 2, around there, items can be tracked at once. And everyone's stack is different. Everyone's max stack is different. So you need to find out what yours is, how big yours is, or how small yours is, and work within it. And when I say items, I I really mean items. They can be as general or as specific as you need them to be. When you're often starting, let's say, this is one item in my stack. Now we have 2 items in my stack. Now we have 3 items in my stack. So 3 items, right? 3 items now. This is my stack. These are the mix-ups in my stack right now. These 3 items. Now, a beginner sees 3 items and has to deal with all 3 of them at the same time and keep all 3 in their stack at the same time. That's hard. An intermediate player might be able to say, you know what? These 2 things are actually one chunk. They're a different thing, but they're chunked together. These fit. So I no longer have to think of them as 2 separate discrete items. It's one item. But this third thing here, it's still a separate thing for them. So now their stack hasn't gotten any bigger. It's the same size. But that item that used to take 3 points or 3 chunks now only takes 2. An expert level player, I'm really glad I figured this out, is able to put that 3 chunks into one thing because they can see these 3 things are actually one thing. They're related in one way. So now they don't have to worry about 3 things. They're thinking of it as one thing, conceptually. This is why it's important to understand the why. Why do things work? Why are they working the way they are? But once you do, you'll understand the fundamental concept that makes this mix-up operate, and you'll take 3 bits that you can't really react to, and it's going to take your mental stack, and it's going to slow your reaction time down. Because the more things in your stack, the worse your reactions are, period. Again, this is just cognitive science. You can't do anything about this. You just can't. You have to integrate them. And that's what expert players do, and that's what makes them better than you. They can do this. Okay? I'm really proud of that. I think that's a really good example. So, the better you get, as you level up, you'll find more and more pieces will come together like this, and you'll be able to hold more and more information in your stack. Even though your stack doesn't get bigger, your stack's the same size. You can't make your stack bigger. Your stack's what it is. That's a cognitive limitation. You're born with that. You gotta figure out how to work with it. If there's an average, some people's stacks are smaller. This will be a YouTube video, yes. But you have to figure out how to work within it. And you can theoretically or conceptually make your stack bigger by making the chunks of information within each component of your stack include more information. But you can only do that if you understand the fundamental abstract concept that governs the rules of the pieces inside. This example is awesome. Brings you back to psychology studies in college, because this basically is a college course right now we're doing. It's not the size of your stack that matters, it's how you use it exactly. Yeah, you'll definitely need to watch this again. I hope this video does well too. This is a lot of work. We'll see how this goes. But once you've become comfortable with the execution of moves, you can focus on bigger picture. Right. So that's another way you can tell. It's not funny. I know it's true. I hope it does well. As you get better at the game, you can feel it cognitively, because bigger things become part of your stack. Your chunks of information that you're holding in your mind become bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's how you get better at a game or anything. Make your stack work with your stack. You can't make it bigger, but you can make it more conceptual, make it more abstract, and that's how you get better reactions. Look, I've been tricking that cop. Shut the fuck up! I'll shoot the fuck out of you, fucking Jackie. To maybe shoot you. That's the size of the stack. That's how you use it. So are the best players the ones that know how to hold and take in as much information as possible without overloading in the match? Yes. That's part of what makes them better. I've been fiending for more mental stack analysis. I was trying to look for psychology and stuff. If you want to figure out what mental stack is in psychology, just type in working memory. Mental stack is your working memory. That's all it is. The technical term is working memory. There's a limit to how much you can keep in your mind at once and work with and do anything with. That's why we call it working memory. How much information can you hold in your mind and do something with? Something can be anything. And what the information is can be anything. So our minds can hold anything in it. It's like RAM. It's exactly like your RAM. It's exactly like your RAM. Okay. So, back to unreactable. So how do you make your 20-25 frames moves unreactable or harder to react to? Overload their fucking mental stack. Have better mix-ups. So the better your mix-ups are, the slower moves you're allowed to use now, because your opponent has to handle their mental stack. Basically, you're taking this pin and you're saying, all right, these are two different things now. And the way you do that is by your options have to acquire different responses from your opponent that can't be option select out of. So they're going to be like, I'm just going to block everything. Because you're just doing elbows and jabs, and those are all highs, and I can just block those. And I can break your throws, because I can react to that too. And I can block your lows, because those are, slow, and I can block them. All right, well, what if? Now they got to worry about a throw that they have to guess on, because they can't see it. Oh, fuck. You've just made their stack bigger. Or, what if you also now include a fast low they can't react to, because it's less than 15 frames. Ah, fuck. Now they got to deal with all three of these things. Now they have to guess. They have to guess your throw, and they got to guess whatever attack you're going to do. Or they might have to guess you're going to go into AOP and get under their shit. And they don't know what it is. So they're fucked there too. So now they might even have a fourth option in front of their heads. Bam! You just fucked their shit up. That's how you build your mix-ups. Off of the fundamental processes that human brains work within, our constraints. That's how you build them. That's how I build my mix-ups. This is how I integrate my psychology knowledge with my fighting game knowledge. I take it, this knowledge is why labbing is so important? Yes. That's how you figure these things out. You can figure it out in the match too, but you can figure it out by labbing as well. All right, next, reactions, more. What are reactions? Let me put this in here. The art of noticing that a certain action have occurred and then taking a specific action as a result. On defense, you'll use reactions to do things like see an overhead, change to a standing block, or see a jump and anti-air with an uppercut. On offense, you can force people to swing and miss and then whiff, punish them, or you can hit confirm your attacks when they land. Reactions can come from visual or audio cues. Usually it's a combination of both. Granted, now remember, we're still talking about frames here. We're still talking about frames here. Reactions are the next point of frames. Because remember, frames are time. It's the unit of time in the game. So if you don't know your frames, you won't know what's unreactable or what's reactable. And you won't know, okay, how do I do a mix-up that requires them to make a read that's outside their reaction ability? This is really, really important. And when you look at the attacks execution of your characters, and you're figuring out, okay, what level do I have? What mix-ups do I have? What can I do here that's real? This is how you figure it out. It's a mixture of frames and human limits. Open at robots. I'm going to reset my brain. Works. It's mentally exhausting. Oh, that's cool. What else do we have here? I'm trying so hard to make my database skills work for Tekken. Okay. So not everything is reactable in fighting games since humans have physical limits. I already went over this. Because of the struggles of dealing with mental stack, even good players will often get hit by moves that have 20 frames of startup or more. Don't feel bad when it happens to you. The opposite of doing something on reaction is a guess. And both halves of this coin is vital for fighting game design. Take a look at this. Reacting, standing up and blocking. Another example. Reacting, anti-air. More. Reacting, ultimate. Get fucked. Okay? Next. I already went through this, so we're not gonna go over this again. Should I even bother showing this to you? No, we won't. Here it is. There's more visual examples of the same thing. Active frames. I'll show you this. I've already gone over this now, but now you can see it a little more, even more clearly. A lot of great examples using Killer Instinct. 4 frames for startup, boom. Attack frames on the screen. Same deal. Slash means first frame of active is the same as last frame of startup. They overlap. Recovery, boom, you're out of recovery now. Boom, that's it. Take a look. See that red flash? Active. What do we have here? Startup, active, frames, recovery, boom. Okay? All games work this way. There's no escaping it. Minus. What does minus mean, really? After a move's blocked, who gets to act first? The one who jumps first. They both jumped at the same time. Same deal here. Blocked. Both attack. Both try to do something. Because the green one got to move first, they get to attack first. A severe example of, I think that's a punish, a block punish. Okay, I'll just read this out for you. So when you cannot freely act, but your opponent can, usually you're too busy recovering from your own move. It's not too much fun to be minus in a fighting game. First of all, if you're 2 minus, you can be punished. And, let me minimize this. You know, I'm going to skip this because we already talked about it. Nitaku. Is Street Fighter 6 the first frame trap of active? Is this the same way in other games? No, it's not. That's why different games handle it differently. I say don't worry about it. That's one of the things. I would rarely say don't worry about it. That's one of the times I would say don't worry about it. This is one of those times. I'd say it's not important. Okay, I have to go. Thank you for coming, Peach. Oh wait, I'll answer your question right now. What was your question? Ask it again. We're basically at the tail end. We're at the end before we get to the game theory. What's the best way to drill test inputs to encourage good execution? A good way to test it is, let's say you know your attack, you know your, how much, basically you record the computer doing an attack that is going to be frame perfect, require you to be frame perfect. So you have to know your frames, right? So let's say you do a move and it's -5. It's almost -5. The person who's had their move blocked is -5. They'll attack with a jab right away. And this is a better example. Ling, we'll use Ling because I know her frames. Let's say you do 2, standing 2, you get hit by it. Ling is +6 in that situation. So if Ling were to try and do a jab, she would be doing a jab, and you did a jab at the same time, there are 10 frames. You would both not attack, hit each other at the same time. The Ling who's +6 will hit you out of it. But let's say Ling, instead of doing a jab and hitting you with it, she does 1-2, which is -3 on block. If I am remembering properly, I'm pretty sure it's -3 on block. So this time, if she jabs, her move will be 13 frames instead of 10. For one, she'll be 13 instead of 10. So if you do a 12-frame attack, it will beat hers. But if you're a frame late, you will trade. That's how you practice your execution. You practice frame trap situations. That if you're 1 frame late, you will get hit. That's how you know. That's how I practice it. Does Nitaku not apply? Oh no, it does. It does. One thing to keep in mind is that one should be mindful of their own monitor's input delay. That can add up to 5 frames. Mine doesn't. You should get a monitor that doesn't do that. But yeah, Peach, you have to know your frames for your attacks. Of your attacks and your opponent's attack. Luckily, Tekken 8 shows you them. But basically do the math and find out, okay, I'm +5, or that means if my opponent did a 10-frame attack, I'm going to hit them out of it. If I do a move that is, let's say you're +5, your opponent tries to do a 10-frame jab, as long as you do a move that's 14 frames or faster, you'll beat them. I would advise you to use a 14-frame move because that will mean if you're 1 frame late and they try to jab you, you will get hit. That's how you practice it. You really should do it against on every attack, so you learn all your frames for every move, but that's like a lot to overkill. I wouldn't do that. I'm not going to do that. That's too much work. That would get boring to me. That makes sense? Any questions? Is that clear? I know this is a long stream. Like 2 hours. Just talking about this talking. Nope. Okay, perfect. And just hit me up, on Twitter. My DMs are open. Well, we're not done yet. That was just a question. One thing to keep in mind is that make sure your monitor's on point. Nitaku applies to Tekken as well, but it's different. But I'm going to talk about Nitaku first. So, because I think this is now more important than Tekken. And y'all aren't used to this, but I am. I live for this stuff. Thank you again for your wisdom. I hope y'all have a rest. Thank you, Peach. Thank you. Nitaku, what is that? It's a mix-up in Virtua Fighter where the offensive player has strong game advantage and can primarily choose between two options. Common option is between a fast mid or a throw, because an attack will beat someone's throw, and an attack will also lose to someone who tries to press a button. So that's a 2-point guess there. Each of which requires a different defensive decision or action to avoid taking damage. I don't think it's big enough. I'll make it bigger. Nitaku is Japanese for two choices, indicating that binary 50-50 nature the defender is in. You might also hear it called forced choice or 2AFC, two alternative voice choice. I hate this terminology so much. This one makes you want to vomit. People do use it, but I hate it. I hate it so much. God. Ugh. This needs a new name. We need a new name for this. We need a better name for English. Because this is a direct translation from Japanese. It doesn't work in English very well. So, say some more. Due to the wealth of defensive options in VF, including jumping, crouching, backdashing, using defensive move, which is an evade, and many more, each offensive action usually has multiple ways to defend. However, if you can generate enough plus frames, in Virtua Fighter 5, it's +6. That's the magic number in VF. 6. Right here it says 6 or higher is the magic number. Wait, why is that? There's a thing for that? Okay, we'll do that next. I just want to know what that is. You can eliminate a lot of these defensive choices. To take the mid or throw example, a defender facing an Nitaku will be left with a more or less binary guess. Lock the mid and lose to the throw, or try to attack so that the throw doesn't work and get counter hit by the mid. Picking any other defensive choice is very likely to lose to both offensive options. The guess is heavily in the offensive person's favor, leading to a big reward if you're correct. That's why Virtua Fighter is very offense focused, it's very aggressive, because it's leaning toward the offense player because of these situations. Sometimes you'll hear reverse Nitaku, which is the same situation, but thinking about it from the defender's point of view. This is to say, rather than say you can attack or throw, reverse Nitaku suggests the defender can block or attack. More advanced situations can crop up that branch into 3 options. You might have guessed this is called Sentaku, for 3 choices. Now, VF currently has very few true 2-choice situations. Sentaku is more common, actually. There 3 choices is often what you're faced with, and because you can typically option select your way out of a lot of options that look like Nitaku, but they're not. So because Virtua Fighter has such strong defensive choices and options for you, you can play up close and really be relatively safe. Tekken, at the moment, to me, feels like you don't have a lot of defensive options. So you don't have a lot of ways out of things, which makes it really difficult to get out of forced 2-choice situations. It feels a little bit like older Virtua Fighters where you didn't have a lot of defensive options and you were really stuck and you had to guess. There's not many ways to slip out of shit. Unless you have AOP, then you can slip out of all kinds of things. So magic number, what is this? It's a frame advantage number that allows you to divide all moves in a game into one of two categories. For example, if the fastest common attack in the game is 3 frames, this means that all moves that are -2 on block or better are safe, not counting the rare exception. You might say that -2 is the magic number. It means that if you want to lump moves broadly into safe, -2 or better, or unsafe, worse than -2, categories, all you care about is what side of this magic number it falls on. Each game has different magic numbers depending on their frame data. Again, this is why frame data is important and how the mechanics operate. So frame data along with mechanics are very important. That's why I've talked to you about input buffers, because that's part of the mechanics of a game. You have to know both of those things for frame numbers to be really useful. If you notice one, not the other, you're missing the full picture. And I've never seen anyone talk about these things in concert. Like what I'm doing with you right now, I have never seen anyone ever do. Because it's kind of hard. You see, it's been like an hour and a half. Okay, it takes a long time. For example, here, rep Tekken example, 10 is a magic number in Tekken because the 10 frame jab starts up in 10 frames. So you'll be looking for gaps of 10 frames or more in your opponent's pressure. And +6 is a magic number in Virtua Fighter, since that is where Nitaku starts to work due to the startup of throws and attacks. Thanks for following airtimely. So we're going to blow it on this a little more. In VF, there are many magic numbers, and they mean different things. Same thing with Tekken. There are a couple of different magic numbers I've also learned of as well. I'm trying to find all the magic numbers for Tekken still. I haven't found them all yet. But in Virtua Fighter, here's how they work. You get different defensive options available to you at different numbers. If you're at -5, you can do what we call a fuzzy guard, which allows you to option select someone's throw attempt and their fast mid. You can block their fast mid and you'll avoid their throw. Awesome. Sounds great. But you have to use a very specific kind of input to do that as the defender. Cool, whatever, fine. At -2, you can do the same thing. However, it's a different input you would use at that frame advantage to get out of those two situations. You just hold down. Hold down for a few frames, let it back up, you'll block the mid, and you'll get under you'll duck their high attack, their high throw. From -3, -5, you can't just hold down anymore, it's too slow, you have to crouch dash. So you press down, forward, guard, certain timing, you'll block both. So there are two magic numbers here. -3, well, really, -2, that's the last time you can just hold down to get under a mid, get under a throw, and stand up to block the mid. And the other magic number is -5. That's the last frame you can use crouch dash to get under someone's fast mid, to get under their fast throw and to block their mid. Then that's why +6 is the magic number they're referring to here. Because from -6, you lose that option select. It's gone. Boom. It's out of here now. Now you have to guess. Now you have to either break their throw and block their mid or evade. But really, if you're not thinking about evades, you have to just block the throw. Sorry, I didn't mean to take you off. Or block the throw, block the mid, or break the throw. Tekken, so far, my understanding is -9 is the first big magic number. You're outside of punish range there. And then you have -3, which is when you can still step. You can still move around. And I'm sure there's some other magic numbers as well. But what makes a magic number magic is that it dictates what defensive options you have available to you. See your plan, Daddy? See your ass? That's what's going on there. So, magic numbers are over. Last step. Game theory. Okay? So, I've been YouTubing far and wide for Tekken magic numbers like that. Most FGC vids are about frames or just 101s. They all are. They literally all are. They all are just one-on-ones. Thank you, Dragon Joe. Mind sharing that article? Yeah. So this one's a little harder. Well, and this is the ending part too. I'm just gonna scroll down here. Thank you for following, Potato. Let's just read this paragraph together. So in Tekken 7, the game runs at 60 frames per second, and jabs are 10 frames. These are the fastest moves in the game. The kick, you can't see it because it's broken link, I used to show the switch transition for Josie in the previous post, takes 14 frames to execute. So a jab will beat the switch transition kick every time if they both start at the same frame, because 10 frames is less than 14, right? We know this now. However, if the jab is started slower than 4 frames after the switch kick is started, the switch kick hits first. If the jab somehow started exactly 4 frames after the switch kick started, the two attacks would actually hit on the same frame. So, there's actually a 4-frame window where the player can see the start of the kick, start a jab after the kick started, and then hit the opponent first, even though they attack last. This is related to reactions, okay? So, moves have some startup to them, right? You can visually see some startup. If you can see, you get to react, press a button, and if your button is fast enough, you'll beat them. However, 4 frames is way too little for a human to react to. You can't see that shit. The human is only able to really react to a visual signal of about 20 frames or more. Even then, reacting properly in a time scale of 20 frames takes a good amount of practice and focus, which means you can't do other things very well. So the question of whether the switch kick or the jab would hit first still remains arbitrary, since neither move can be reacted to anyway. But there are situations where a difference of even a single frame does end up being significant. This is where the concept of frame advantage comes in. Move properties and frame advantage. Every attack... we already did this. We're going to skip this. I was looking for it. Okay, yeah, this is good. So, thank you for following Barrel Log Crusader Drive. So, you hit each other. The resulting frame advantage of most moves is typically within plus or minus 10 frames, which is still faster than human reaction. However, the startup and recovery of an attack can add more than 20 additional frames of visual information before the recoveries end. This gives both players enough time to visually read the situation and make a decision on what to do with the upcoming frame advantage, even if the frame advantage itself can be really small. This is how you use reactions. You don't just react to the attack after it hits, you react to the whole situation. From the previous post, I mentioned that some moves from an attacker are slow enough that if blocked, the defender can retaliate with a move before the attacker can recover. This is called a block punish. In this situation, the frame advantage is so negative, the defender can't recover, start an attack, and hit the attacker, all before the attacker's recovery period ends from the first move. The defender, thank you for following, Josh, has enough time to recognize the situation during the attack and recovery period to take advantage of the upcoming frame advantage. Thank you for following, Cam Deuce, and input the proper response to punish the attacker. Skip through here. Pretty much any fighting game that is played at all, people have gone through the effort of measuring the frame properties of all moves, various hit and block situations. I'll be using the frame numbers for Josie as a reference in this post. For a person that's new to fighting games, this may seem like a lot of numbers to learn, but one can get away with knowing some general rules about what types of moves tend to be plus and minus punishable on hit or block. Corey Gaming, we'll link his channel here in the chat. Made a great video on frame advantage and other concepts for beginners. I also recommend the channel. Okay, so now we're going to go deeper. Frame advantage into turns and transitions and choices. So how does the concept of frame advantage relate to the concept of turns? The player with the positive frame advantage is usually the player that's considered to be taking a turn. As you saw, you didn't see that. Well, I'm going to say it anyway. As you saw in the previous section, the players with the positive frame advantage has better outcomes than the other player, even if the two players select the same option. So we'll consider the player with the positive frame advantage as the attacker and the other player as the defender. In the previous post, I just assumed that the game started with the attacking Josie transitioning in the switch stance from a kick move. I actually don't know Josie or that stance she's talking about, but it doesn't matter. However, does having frame advantage, no matter how small, does having a frame advantage, no matter how small, allow the attacker to just transition in the switch stance at will? As we saw in the previous section, the kick to transition into switch stance takes 14 frames to start. So trying to use this move with a frame advantage of less than +4 leaves the possibility for the defender to interrupt the transition with a jab. This applies for all moves that transition into a stance, like lings, punch, forward 2, 1, back. On hit, she's +11. Eat that mix. But on block, she's like not. So she can get interrupted if you want. So how does the attacker get into switch stance in the first place? The jab is 10 frames and is actually +1 on block. This means that an attacker just spamming jab into a defender's guard will always be at a positive frame advantage. If the defender tries to interrupt with her own jab, they'll simply get hit by the attacker's jab. Josie's jab is +8 on hit as well, so if the attacker's jab even ever hits, the attacker can then go into switch stance without the defender being able to interrupt it with their own jab. This situation is called a frame trap. For the defender, been watching a lot of Knee and JDCR to understand their jab game? Yeah. For the defender, and the defender is incentivized to not press buttons, i.e., don't do any attacks and just stand there and block, baby. This window of inaction is what gives the attacker the opening to transition into switch stance instead. This basic interaction with the jab is so fundamental to the offensive game in Tekken 7 that Tekken great JDCR made a video on how important the jab is.
Hi guys, this is JDCR. Today I'll not be talking about a character or a move. I'll be discussing one jab. While it doesn't seem like it, one jab is actually very important in the Tekken series and it affects the game a lot. In Tekken, it's very important to get plus frame because it decides who will be in the offensive or defensive position. It also affects the spacing between the players. To get a plus frame is always risky. Most good moves that give us a plus frame have a weakness. They might be slow or don't track sidestep. For this reason, I want to talk about one jab with you. Why is it one jab useful? First, it directly gives a plus frame even though it's usually +1. So, you can control the situation and do mix-ups. Second, it's not risky even when your opponent sidestep your one jab. It has fast recovery. When I use Dragunov, I like to initiate with one jab because his moves are great but slow to start up. Running 2, down 2 and others are solid moves, but they are not as fast and safe as one jab. Brian is similar. Each of his moves is powerful but slow, so we initiate with one jab to get close. It is important to spam sometimes when you are in minus frame to cut the opponent's pressure or make him think again before he controls the situation. Usually we will see hop kicks for this reason.
In VF, we would refer to that as reverse Nitaku.
So, how does one jab work for defense? It doesn't make great damage like hop kick, but somehow it's useful to cut your opponent. Unlike hop kick, which is easy to be avoided and punished, one jab is safe when it's whipped. Our opponent can sidestep one jab, but it's almost impossible to whip punish it because one jab has very fast recovery.
I didn't know
One
that.
jab is a small move, but it does.
So that's unlike Virtua Fighter. Your jab and VF can be punished. Not on evade, but if you black dash it, it can be.
For you. It is fast, it controls the frame and situation, and it is also very safe when it's whipped. So when in doubt, consider using one jab. Hopefully you enjoy the concept of this video. If you liked it, please subscribe to
Okay, that's the end of it. I'll link this video to you all too. Again, second time. There it is. Back to the music. I figured let JDCR talk for himself. There. No need to interpret it. So turns aren't so absolute though. The defender can avoid the attacker's jab to not get into block stun in the first place, for example, by ducking to avoid the attacker's jab, and by doing a jab from a ducking point, like a duck jab. If the defender successfully responds to an attacker's jab in this way, the defender then secures a positive hand advantage, and thus the turn as the attacker, for themselves. I think they built that up. That input buffer really improved my jab game now that I'm buffering, yes. This kind of move is referred to as stealing the turn, or just a challenge, from the defender. However, a duck jab is risky because the attacker can counter the duck jab with a low parry combo. We can construct this sub-game, which we'll call the minor advantage game, very important, for positive frame advantage about 4, plus or minus 4. Less than 4. 3 options. Jab, standing, jab is blocked, plus 1. Jab, jab hits, plus 8. Duck jab, defender jab hits, you're plus 6 for the defender. Duck/low parry, defender can see the duck and then be able to jab first. Defender has committed to a jab, which attacker is now ducking. Attacker can jab first afterwards. Attacker does a combo to the defender. Switch. Go to switch. It's a Josie situation here. Defender jabs hit, plus 8 for the defender. Defender jab hits, plus 6 for the defender. I don't really fully understand like switch stance, so I don't think this is working as well for me, but hopefully it works for you. So minor advantage game with abstracted outcomes. Thank you. So to describe transitions more concretely for this and other game types, I'll assume these rules. Any player will not try to challenge from frame disadvantage of -4 frames or lower. This player with positive frame advantage immediately goes to switch stance as the attacker, and the other player blocks the kick that goes into switch. Note that this means that the kick to transition into switch will itself never hit. Anytime a player is comboed or is otherwise knocked down onto the ground, the position is reset to a minor advantage for the player that did the combo or knocked down the other player. Thanks for following, James. So we can express the minor advantage game with direct transitions into other games, including instances of itself. Jab, stand, attack, minor advantage game. Jab, jab, attacker, jab, hits, attack, switch game. Duck jab, jab, defender jab hits, defender switch game. So this left side, this part is the attacker. This is the defender. So I attacked duck, low parry. Defender, minor game advantage. I think that's what they're saying. Yeah, fuck it, we'll skip through this part. I can do the same for the game I presented in the long blog post. I'll go ahead and split the game into 2 separate sub-games for the switch and options following a step-in. I wish I knew what the fuck switch was. Switch 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, step-in. Stand, block, defender, whatever. We're gonna skip this part. I don't know what switch is. I really don't know what switch is. Let's skip to this part. So one of the problems with this post model is that they're just doing damage values without any consideration. So now we're talking about health and strategies around health. Without any consideration of remaining health or even the win condition of the game, that's about depleting the opponent's health to 0. For example, consider a situation where both players have only 5 health, sudden death. So any hit from either the attacker or defender would just win the game. In this case, we don't really care about how much damage our hit does. So that's a sudden death scenario. Furthermore, let's assume that this is the last turn of the overall game, and if both players are still alive by the end, the player with the higher health total will win the game. If both players have the same health, then the winner of the game is chosen by coin flip. Here, we can dun, dun. Skip through, skip, skip. This is the game 3-bit. I actually don't think this is super helpful. I'm trying to find... I'll just do my own voice, fuck it. So here's the end, okay? The end of this is, thank you for the subscription, Biggie Dells. In this author's previous post, the switches are from Josie's in Tekken 7. She has those switches, and it's based on her move list. And it's, yeah, I just don't know what switch does. I don't know what it does, so I can't abstract from it because I don't know what that is. I didn't realize how much they use that term, so I'm like, I don't know what that is, really. I can't really use that. I could think of it from Xiao Yu. It's just a stance. Okay. So should we continue with that video? Should we continue with that example? Because I can't explain it because I don't know it that well. I can read it, but I'm not going to be able to really explain it that well. But I can tell you what I think they're saying, which basically is when both players have the same amount of health, mix-ups don't really change that much. But when one player's health is much lower than the other, then options change. So certain options that are riskier when one player's health is low and the other one's very high. For the player that's low health, it makes more sense for them to take chances that are riskier. While the person who has lots of health, makes more sense for them to play safer. So they should do things that won't open them up to getting damaged as often, while the defender really needs to make choices that could kill them, because at that point, any move will kill them. Should we try it? All right, I'll bring it back then. I'll bring it back. So AOP, switch 1, is blocked. So what stand, but what's being blocked though? So I can do the same for the game I presented in the last blog post. I'll go ahead and split the game up into 2 separate sub-games for which AOP and options following a step. So what's step in though? I don't know what step in is. So standing, switch 1, because option 1, standing. Thank you for following Blop and Drebin. Blocked, defender goes into switch, or defender goes into AOP. Duck / low parry. Defender combos, attacker, because they parried it. Defender has minor advantage, because after the combo you have minor advantage. Jab. Bree, any move could kill them, but do you think you have more room for error to be wrong 2 times than once if they're low health? I think the step in this case is like the next step, maybe. I think it's right. I think it's from her stance too. I just don't know that game. I think you're right too, Zulu. Josie could move into another stance called stand after. Oh really? Oh. So how would we make this AOP-able? I'm thinking maybe hypnotist, like her going into forward 2, 1. Or like 1 down 2, hypnotist, back turn, forward, hypnotist, back turn, or forward. Saying forward. I think those are the 3 options. Or like finishing the string. I think that's a better analogy, but I don't fully understand the situation they're presenting here. We need some Josie mains. All I have are Xiao Yu mains in my chat, and like a couple of Yoshis. But here they're like 5 different options. But basically they're stand, duck, low parry. Standing meaning they stand there and block. They attack you back. They try to launch you back. Okay. So for the step in sub game, I'll be adding a few more options that I didn't include in the last post. Let's skip through here. Some more options here. Great, cool. So calculating win probabilities and chaining smaller sub games into larger games. So this is about win conditions. Now, we've gone from frames to input buffers to win conditions now. These all connect to each other. and you get the win condition by chaining smaller sub games, which are these little things here. I just don't know. I don't understand the situation very well because I don't play that character, and it seems no one else in the chat does either because Josie's dead. Poor girl. Poor girl. So what is this saying? One of the problems with the previous post model is that I just using damage value without any consideration for remaining health or even the win condition of the game, which is about getting to 0. For example, consider a situation where both players only have 5 health, so any hit will end the game. In this case, we don't really care about how much damage our hit does. So let's consider this sudden death scenario and let the attacker already be in switch stance. Furthermore, let's assume that this is the last turn of the overall game and that if both players are still alive by the end, the player with the highest health will win. If both players have the same health, then the winner of the game will be chosen by coin flip. This is what I was doing in my Google Sheets. I was making a payoff matrices to figure the best moves. Perfect. We can make a payoff matrix where the values are the probability of winning of the attacker instead of the damage values. Any of the situations where the attacker gets a hit is a win for the attacker. So the value of that cell is 1. Any hit for the defender is a win for the defender, so the value for that cell is 0. Any other situation is a draw, and the coin flip to decide the winner, so the value is 0.5. That's pretty cool. So we can solve this for this game's Nash equilibrium. Nash equilibrium is game theory. It's game theory. Nash is game theory. Beautiful mind, that's Nash. He made that. That's him. So, attacker strategy, defender strategy. So attacker strategy. This, I guess. Fuck, I don't know what these are. So, take it out a little bit. Still, I can't see. So we get the value of this switch subgame at attacker health, defender health, turns left. That's interesting. 551 to be about 0.5, half, 50%. We can do a similar calculation for the similar setting, but where the attacker is only at a minor advantage. Here, 100. This is only one of many solutions because the game collapses to the defender standing there 100% of the time, which just makes the game a draw no matter what the attacker does, except the attacker needs to choose a strategy such that the defender doesn't want to do anything else. The end result is that this subgame is an overall draw. Now, let's consider the step in game where attacker health, defender health turns left. 552. We're still in sudden death, life values, but we're allowing for another subgame after this one in case no attack hits in the first turn. We now get a payoff matrix that depends on the values on possible future games. Note, meaning more turns. Note that if the turn would pass to the defender, we have to invert the probability back to the perspective of the attacker. For example, if we transition to another game, we'd have the defender winning 75% in that other game. The attacker's payoff here is going into the transition will be 25%. Very complicated. I barely understand this. The two subgame values we depend on here are the values we calculated earlier. We can plug those in and then solve for the Nash equilibrium for the same game, for this new game. Here it is. So we can get the Nash equilibrium. Just hang with me, y'all. Hang with me. We can get the Nash equilibrium value for the attacker from step 552 is about 66%. We can use this concept of linking smaller solutions to construct a payoff matrix for subgames with higher health or turn counts. This construction will give us, this is really important. Thank you for following House Loop and FFG. This construction will give us a Nash equilibria for any game starting at larger health values and turn count that we want. So to solve the entire game, we first define some base game results that describe turns running out or either player running out of health. Thank you, you two, both. Yeah, do you have a pasta now? To solve for any game, we define the payoff matrix dependent on the values of other subgames, and each get the Nash equilibrium value. I was always tried, bro. Now you're bringing math and this is what's going on behind the scenes. Note that if the turn passes to the defender, we have to switch the values accounting for any damage that may have been taken. We used the transition rules to defend earlier when we talking about frame advantage and I pasted it in the chat. Someone can share it with you. We use the transition rules we defined earlier when talking about frame advantage and transitions. Since the turn counter is always decreasing, the game must end eventually, leading us to one of the base game results we defined just above. So, the chain of dependencies must end no matter how big the game was initially. So the calculation will eventually finish, giving us a final solution. Here's some templates. I don't understand, but whatever. Let's continue. So how do you find the overall solution? So let's apply all this to get solutions for the game that somewhat resembles a real game. For the overall game, the two players start max health. Starting count 100 counts, 100 turns to simulate a round timer. Also, I'll just assume some player starts off in a minor advantage in the first turn. Given all the transition tables above, we have method to solve this game. We just have to extend our transitions out from the overall game, extend the transitions from those transitions, and so on until we hit the base result. Time running out or a player goes to 0 health. The problem is that the number of subgames we have to solve gets quite large, like exponentially large. This is what every fighting game is doing in their head, naturally, without thinking about it. This is what we're doing. This is why fighting games are so fucking hard. And I really do mean exponentially large. As in, there's an exponential growth function here. And not just kind of fast like exponentially large tends to be used. The number here can be approximated by number of transitions per node to the exponential depth. The number of transitions per nodes is somewhere between 9 and 16, the size of our game matrices. And the depth of the tree is the number of turns. So something like 10 raised to 100, power 100, which is far too many subgames to calculate. This is why players who are consistently able to beat you are fucking good. Like, the best players are fucking good because they're doing this in their head. That's what your brain's doing. It's really cool. They're talking about how they calculate it. We're going to skip this. Results. When there's a lot of time left, a little bit more time doesn't really matter. So the first thing they noticed in the data is that values of the games converge to some values once we get to a high enough turn counter. That is, at large time, the probability of the attacker winning is about the same, even if you add a little bit more time. Many of these charts are showing the value of the games at large amounts of time left, except when otherwise noted. Okay, fine. Bigger health advantages. This one's pretty cool. It means players take less risk, or vice versa. This is really important, and you'll see this happening all the time. If we keep one player's health constant, and then decrease the other player's health, we can see the effect on player strategy as the health advantage increases or decreases for the attacker or defender. Here's a sweep of the Switch game, where we keep the attacker's health at 170 and let the defender health drop to 0. Right, here we are talking about the life lead, and why having a life lead is so important, and how your strategy really should change as your life either gets ahead of your opponent, or vice versa, you're losing life and you gotta fucking make a comeback. Defender strategy. So this is the attacker strategy. Many health, probability you're gonna win goes up really fucking high. Goes up to 1, approaches 1 as your life lead gets higher. Defender strategy still sucks. But look what changes here. I don't know what switch 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 mean, but launch, a duck jab becomes really useful, and defender launching becomes really useful at this point. Outcome. Attacker health 170. As their, I don't know, defender health, what? Huh? Defender comboed. Transition to step in. I don't understand so well. Explain to me. Unsurprisingly, thank you for following nostalgia. Unsurprisingly, the probability for the attacker winning overall increases as the defender's health decreases. Duh. An interesting result is, though, that the strategy of probabilities for most options for both the attacker and the defender don't change much at all either. But as the health advantage increases for the attacker is using switch 2 more and using step in less, and the defender is correspondingly stand blocking less and trying to jab to interrupt more. Intuitively, this makes sense. Switch 2 for the attacker is the safest option, as the worst case scenario is getting jabbed by the defender. While all other options for the attacker can result in the attacker getting a combo. AKA, if you have the life lead, play safe. Don't open yourself up to getting comboed. You are definitionally playing more optimally, and you by definition win more games statistically. You'll lose. You're still going to lose sometimes. But if you play the odds over a large amount of games, you'll win more than you lose. Meanwhile, the defender is taking more risks by jabbing instead of standing because of the threat of an attacking switch 1, leading to a game-winning big combo. The attacker actually does increase the probability of using switch 1 as the defender's probability of jab spikes up. The spike of the defender jabbing even more at 15 health is probably because that's the critical health value where switch 3 will kill the defender. So the defender is jabbing also to stop switch 3. Yeah, I'm guilty of being impatient when I have to lead because I want to wrap it up. This makes me wonder, how can I make my opponent take more and more risks? Get the life lead. That's how. The overall result is as the health advantage widens, the attacker is more willing to just take minor damage, taking the safer option, and the defender is more willing to get comboed to try and close the health gap. You can also keep the defender health constant at 170 and then sweep attacker's health down to 0. What happens then? In this case, get the life lead, make them work, and get desperate. They have to take risks, which makes it worse for them, and lose. Exactly. Punish them at that point. In this case, as the health advantage for the defender widens, the opposite tendency occurs. The attacker is choosing to transition more into step-in game, and the defender is more than happy to let that happen just by standing there. But why would the attacker want to transition to step-in more at the bigger health disadvantages? We can do a similar sweep of the step-in game. At high enough health values, this part's really useful. The attacker is mostly doing step-in 4, which is a completely safe move, and only really leads to the defender going in switch stance if blocked. The main mix-up being the uncommon step-in 3 option to incentivize the defender into ducking or a step into 1+2 to try and get a positive frame advantage, thus keeping the turn. We can see that at some low enough health value, the attacker completely changes the strategy. The attacker no longer does step-in 4, but ramps up to the uses of step-in 3 much more and adds in step-in 2 that can launch the defender for a big combo. However, each of these options leads to the attacker taking a big combo if the defender guards the correct way. The attacker is now opting for a high-risk, high-reward coin flip. Basically, if you are losing life, you're about to die, and your opponent has lots of health, you have to make them guess, and make the guess worth it for you. The interesting thing here is that the defender barely changes its strategy. Even if the attacker switches to a high-risk, high-reward strategy, the defender is more than willing to let that attacker take risky actions and hang themselves. Probably because the odds of this game are in the defender's favor in the long run. The increase of the defender jabbing at 5 health for the attacker is probably just due to the jab hitting being an instant win for the defender at that point. How do I beat Japanese Yoshimitsu players? That's what I gotta know? I don't know. Time pressure can also lead to taking higher risks. So, we see the attacker completely changes strategies as the attacker needs to overcome a health disadvantage. A low amount of turns remaining can also lead to a similar pressure on the attacker, even at higher health values. But, here's a sweep. Oh, here's a sweep. Defender health constant. We'll skip through here. But we're noting the first time as the number of turns left decreases that the attacker first considers using a high-risk, high-reward option in step-in 2 option. Even at moderate health disadvantages, the attacker is willing to take risks to attempt to get big damage on the defender to close the life lead before time runs out. So, being the attacker is a minor advantage, more so in low health situations. So we can calculate this math, skip this. The advantage just for being the attacker, thank you for following, Nicole, instead of the defender at high health is low. But the advantages increase as both players get to low health values. This is probably because at low health values, the next player that does damage wins. First will win the game, and the current attacker is favored in doing damage. Next, we can also see the attacker is favored more as they transition into minor advantage switch step in. This makes sense since it's presumably designed that way in the game, but it's also possible that it is a natural result of the modeling since the attacker would presumably only choose to go into a certain stance if we're better than the current situation. Closing up. There's still quite a bit of questions they're curious about, such as the amount of turns. My guess is that many of the games actually end up taking many turns or even ending up in timeouts, since it seems that the prevalent strategies are playing pretty safe, and it's rare for a player to get a combo. But that would take some more coding. Okay, blah, blah, blah. That's it. Okay. That's the end. So, that is everything I know about frame data and how frame data impacts your mix-ups and how frame data impacts the way you approach the game. It is a huge determining factor in deciding what moves you use, when you use them, and how you respond to your opponent's mix-ups. It's massive. It's massive. Any questions? I figure if someone watches this video and they make it all the way to game theory, they're going to be like locked in. I'd like to ask you about the working memory model. Yeah, sure. Go ahead. What do you have? What do you want to know? Play patient and methodologically bait the evasion and flashes and counter them. Be careful with your input buffers and presses because mashing will get you flashed. Yeah. Do you think that applies heavily with fighting games? Yes, I do. With the current model I see in Wikipedia, I don't know what Wikipedia model says. I only know the scientific one that is taught in my college courses. I'm probably betting the one that you see in Wikipedia is a much simplified version of it. I feel like once I understand this well enough to use it in game, I'm going to start seeing the game code like the Matrix CSQL. What will happen is you'll forget it and just play. That's what will happen. I'm not familiar with that model. Like one of the things I do is I do psychological assessments where I actually test to see what someone's working memory is, what their long-term memory is, what their processing speed is, what their verbal memory is, what their fluid reasoning is. I have ways to test all of those things. So do all the psychologists. And we're the only ones who are actually allowed to do those tests and interpret them and like give them to people. So it's actually very complicated and it's very hard to explain in a way that's short. Took me years to learn this stuff. This is a more functional way of learning frame data. I didn't even know there was a magic numbers until today. Awesome. Do you have a model you use to describe player mental stack? I just think of it as like this, like the thing with the thing I did earlier. I think of it as working memory. They can only hold so many chunks of information in their head. And I try to increase their mental stack by giving them legitimate options to have to rotate between that require different options defensively for them to take. That's what I do to increase mental stack. The more legitimate threats, meaning threats that they can't option select out of. That makes sense. I hope, maybe. Oh, so in that way, do you think players track offensive defense in the game? That's a great question, actually. i.e. watching the throw breaks and poking is 2 items in the same stack? No, they're not. Not in my mind. This is a fantastic question, actually. Yeah, thanks for asking. So, they're different. So there's mental stack, which is working memory. There's also a concept called set switching. They're distinct and related. So I think of offense and defense as 2 different sets. And attacking, you have X, Y, Z set of options, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like you're poking. Throw breaks is in a different set. It's part of defensive options. Now you may have to switch between offense and defense pretty quickly, but you're switching because the options available to you are different at an expert level. At the beginner level, you might be thinking of them all as one, like they might all be in one set. But as you get better and better and better, you will be able to chunk all of your attacking options into one set and all of your defending options into one. Whew, I almost spilled that. Holy fuck! Oh! It didn't spill though, but it almost did. Your defending options will be in one other set. That's how you make your working memory have more information within it. How do you know you've learned this though? Since scrubs do exist a lot, how do you truly know you've learned this? I don't understand the question. What does scrubs existing have to do with your mental stack or your offense defense switching? So yeah, attacking is one set, and defending is another set. So throw breaking is in the defensive set, poking is in the offensive set. Like, how do you know you've grasped a switch? Because you'll do it. You know when you do it consistently, without having to think about it so much. You'll feel it in your mind. It ties back to the scientific approach of like, how do I know to stop doing a tactic or to change tactics? Because it stops working. How do you define footsies then? I don't really define footsies. I think footsies is a vague, unuseful term. No one knows what fuck footsie means. Yes, Scruggs. I mean, you can consciously do it too. But if you can do it subconsciously, it's stronger. Where does frantic butt smashing fall under? I don't know. You can tell me though. Or you know. I have no idea. It falls under not knowing what you're doing. Instead of having 3 discrete items in your hand, you have a fucking pile of crap on the floor. I mean, to be more serious, footsies, if you were to think about mental stack and footsies, when you have the low poke, you have them jumping over you, you have walk back, you have dash in, those are all different options. It's a poking game, offense or defense, depends whose has advantage or not. But footsies oftentimes is thought about as neutral. You're both neutral. What do you do then? Right. So let's say you did your crouching forward. The defender is the one who didn't do a crouching forward. And they have to react to your crouching forward attack and whiff punch your crouching forward before it retracts. So you can think of offense as the one who took the aggressive action, and defense as the one who takes the defensive action. Whiff punishing is a defensive action. Throwing a move out, thinking it's going to hit, is an offensive action. So it's the starting point of the mental stack switching. The 434 for me as a Nina main, try that bitch. Oh, back 3-4, I don't know what that is. Neutral. I mean, in neutral things are more complicated because no one has advantage or disadvantage. There, it's more about positional advantage, where the wall is. I'm about to turn on the game and start playing myself, actually. I wanted to make sure I finished answering any questions that might have come out from this and make it easy for me to cut. Thanks for following Sensei Plays.